To get started, we're going to go to the administrative login. So we're going to go to our organizationid.memberclicks.net/administrator. Then we're going to log in using our ASA login credentials. And again, those ASAs are your authorized service administrators. You can also, other admins that are not ASAs will also be able to log in there using their credentials. And that's going to take us to our admin home screen. On the admin home screen, and once again, we have our three main areas, our control panel. Over here on the left, that's for our one-click items that we use most often. We have our admin home statistics area on the right. There you're going to see all your active profiles, any special profiles that you have. You're also going to be able to keep up with your package limits as well. Across the top here, we have our blue admin navigation bar. Starting with our top left, we have our admin home button with our customizable admin home submenu. There currently, it doesn't look like there's any items in there. Website menu drop down. Below here, we're going to go over all these items during our content management system training. So if you're interested in managing that front-end content, that is the group training you should attend. Components. These are all our community and social features. We'll cover these items during our community features group training. Database. Cover these items during our database group training. Forms. We'll be going through these items today. Reports. We'll be going through the form-related reports today. And then, of course, the memberclicks Help Center, where you can access our knowledge base of help articles. And then up here in the top right, on a lot of pages, you'll see this red help question mark. That's going to take you to a targeted help page based upon the page that you're currently on. So let's go ahead and get started here by clicking into the form list in the form submenu. Here you'll see all of our unfiled forms. Up here in the top right, you'll see that where it says View Folder. You're also going to be able to check your forms into other folders. So if you want to organize them into different folders, you can access them up here in the top right. To create a form folder or to move forms to a folder, you're going to tag the forms that you're interested in moving using these tag boxes on the left, and then you'll either select a new folder, or you can also move them to a folder that already exists as well. If you select new folder, it's just going to ask you to name that folder, and then it will create the folder and move the forms in one step. All right, let me make this a little bit larger for you guys. So now you'll see all the different forms that we have here in our unfiled area. You'll see that this form has a red title and also says test in parentheses. This form is in test mode. Every time you receive a form from your implementation manager or from memberclicks, it's going to be in test mode. To move it to that active status, what you're going to do is click Edit next to the form, hit Settings, and then you're going to switch that from test to active, and then you would hit Save down here to make those changes saved. But you shouldn't move a form to active status until you're ready for it to be live to your membership. So before your form goes to active, you should make sure you test it thoroughly from the front end to make sure everything is working the way you expect it to. To access that form from the front end, what you're going to do is click on that form title. Let me go back so you can see what I did. Click on the form title right here. You'll grab this URL from the form title page, and then you'll paste it into a different browser. So you see I'm working in Firefox right now. I'm going to open up Internet Explorer, paste that link in there, and then I'll be able to test that form from my front side as a front-end user. Let me go back here. Some other options you're going to have on this page. Report. That's going to let you see how many submissions you have total. Also, the answers to any of your selection set type questions. Those selection set type questions are going to be those ones where you're making your user choose from a list of options. They're not going to have a box where they can just type in whatever they would like. History. You're going to be able to keep notes on your form here. You're also going to be able to see any status changes. So anytime that form is moving from test to active, active to test, or maybe active to inactive, you'll be able to see all of those form changes here, and you'll also be able to see what user changed that form status. Receipts. Receipts are going to be basically transcripts that are created every time a user fills out a form. So you'll be able to see any kind of payment information that was related to that form, a timestamp of when that form was completed, and you'll also be able to click on this eyeball next to the piece of paper, and you'll be able to see their answers to that form as well. You'll be able to see all their responses. Some other things you can do in this receipt area: you can tag receipts on this page, receipts on all pages. You can export those receipts. You can go to the contact center and contact just those users that have filled out this form. You can apply a print template to this list of users. You can delete any transcript that you would like. And you can also transfer a receipt from one user to another. So if someone maybe was accidentally logged in as someone else when they were filling out a form, so that form got put under the wrong user, then you could go in here, click on the receipt, click transfer, and then move that receipt to another user. Let's go back to our list here. All right. Edit is going to take us to that main form editor. That's where we'll be spending most of our time today. Copy is going to be a great button to use for maybe a conference registration form. So you have your 2011 conference registration form you're not using anymore. You're going to copy that maybe. A lot of that information is going to stay the same from year to year. So you'll just update the information that changes, and then you'll have your 2012 conference registration form much quicker than you would otherwise. Delete. I would caution you against deleting a lot of forms, just because if you delete it, it's also going to delete all of that receipt data, all those form transcripts that were created. So rather than deleting it once you're done with a form that has receipt data, I would say move it to your inactive status. Then you can keep that form around, but no one will be able to take it. I'm going to go ahead and delete this conference registration form here. All right, let's go to our next step today, which is going to be creating a new form. So we're going to go to our Forms menu and hit Create Form in our submenu here. You're going to see that we have 6 main types of forms. We have basic forms. That's going to just let you start from scratch. This is a good form for maybe creating a survey for your membership, or also maybe a ballot if you have an upcoming election that you want people to vote online for. Application. This form is going to be good for adding users to your database. Every member group within your system will need to have a different application. Applications can only add members to one group. So for each group, you'll need a different application form. Event registration form. This form is going to be, obviously, for what it sounds like, registering for events. Some cool features about this is it can link to your event calendar. And you also are going to have the ability for your members to register guests in addition to themselves for an event. Dues form. It's just a renewal form. Kind of neat feature about it is it can move your members from the inactive status back to active. So if they forgot to renew on time, so they expired and they became an inactive member, once they fill out that renewal form will automatically have the ability to move them from inactive back to active status. Donations form, just what it sounds like. It's good for collecting donations. And then our order form is a nice form for if you're selling any kind of products, because it has the ability to calculate that tax and shipping for you. So let's go ahead and create an event registration form today. We'll just call it event registration. So that's our first step, is naming the form. Second step would be if we want to link it to an event on our event calendar. We could go ahead and select an event on there. But let's say maybe we don't have that event created yet. We could create the form and add an event at the same time. And the last option we have there is to create the form without adding an event. You always have the option to link it to an event later. So we're going to go ahead and do that today, and I'll show you where to link it up later. You can register a single user. You can also register parent-child profiles if you have parent-child profiles set up in your database. And what that's going to do is just allow that parent user, in addition to registering themselves, they're just going to be able to register any linked child profiles as well. Today we're going to set the form up just to register a single user. Pricing options. You can set the pricing options up at the beginning of the form if you'd like. You can set it at one price per form, multiple price options, or you can set up the pricing options as you go along, which is what I normally like to do. I like to see how my form's getting laid out, and then I'll set up my pricing options. The last step before we move to that form editor is going to be we can have the option to pull in some database attributes ahead of time just to make building our form a little bit quicker. So if we see some attributes that we know we're just going to want on that form, we can go in there, go ahead and select them real quick, and then we can just pull them in right to that form editor. If we notice that we want an attribute that we didn't check earlier, though, we have this attributes area over here on the right, so we can pull in attributes at any point in time if we decide later. Maybe we forgot one that we wanted to pull in. You'll see over here all these items that we pulled in have blue asterisks next to them. Those blue asterisks are signifying to us as an admin that these items are tying to our database. So when our user logs in to fill out the form, these areas are going to pre-populate with their information that's stored in the database. If they update any of this information as they're filling out the form, once they submit the form, it's also going to update your database for those users if they change any of that information. Those blue asterisks are not going to show up on the front side. Our users are not going to see those. If we click on a field, say first name, I just clicked on that, this property area is going to expand over here on the right. So you'll see attribute, so that's telling us it's tied to the attribute that we have called first name, so it's tying to our database. See what type of field it is. You're also going to see the field label. Field label is what's displaying to our front-end users when they're completing this form. So we can have that a different front-end name than an export name. The export name is what we're going to be using on the back end as administrators. So it's just something to keep in mind here. A lot of times these are going to be exactly the same, but sometimes maybe you have a really long label, field label, and you want to shorten that up on your export name, so that's just where you can do that right there. Default value, what this is if we just had enter name here, that's just going to display in the box over here just when your user enters the form. Probably doesn't make a lot of sense on first name, but there's some cases where that might make sense for you. Size. You're going to be able to resize the box, the length of the box if you want. Everything's going to default to be 20 in length, but if you want to make it bigger, you're going to enter a number bigger than 20. So if we wanted to double it, let's say we'd enter 40. And if we wanted to make it smaller, obviously we'd enter a number smaller than 20. You can also insert a max length, so you can limit the number of characters that are able to be entered in that box. Probably doesn't make sense on a first name, but maybe on a zip code, maybe you want to limit it to so they can only enter 5 digits in there, so you could put a max length of 5. You can make any text box numeric only, so you can make it so your users can only enter numbers in there. You can make a field required, which we'll go ahead and make this field required. You can make a field read only. You can say this field's using price calculations. If you do that on a text box like we're looking at, it's going to make it automatically numeric only. That's how it's going to know what price to charge for this field. Formatting options, you have a few different options there. Alignment options, you also have some different alignment options. You have left, which is obviously going to be left aligned, center, centered, right, right, and then none. Everything that is marked none is going to be lined up with each other. So you can see that all these items are lined up with each other, so they're all none alignment. Group permissions, and you can set that. Group permissions will be if maybe this field is only applicable to certain groups, we could open up that group permissions area, select what groups this field's applicable to, and then it'll only show up to those groups. If we have nothing in here, it's going to show up for everyone who has access to this form. Field logic, we'll go through this in a little more detail later, but what this does, if we have a multiple page form, so right now we only have a one-page form, but if we had a multiple page form, a field on a second page could be dependent on a field on the first page. So if they answer X to question 2 on the first page, then display this, or then either display or not display this question on the second page. And then link this field to an attribute is our last option here. We're already linked to an attribute, so if we click on this, we'll see that we're linked to first name. We could go ahead and unlink it, or we could link it to any other of these available attributes. Let's go ahead and save this. So now you'll see that the field's gotten twice as long. It has enter name here as default, and it's been bolded, and that's what happens when a field is required in the memberclicks system. So what I normally like to do on my forms is I'll throw a label up here, which I use for instruction purposes, and I'll say fields in bold are required. Oh, got out of there somehow. And then what I'll do is put some HTML tags around the word bold to actually bold that word. If you have any questions about HTML tags, Google is a great resource. Whenever I have questions about it, I'll just Google what I want, and there'll be plenty of resources there. You'll see I'm putting in some blank lines here. These blank lines, your front-end users won't see these as well. They're just for spacing on your administrative side. Or, I mean, they're for spacing on your front end, but you only see them on the administrative side. I usually like to put blank lines between each of my fields vertically, just for aesthetics. These fields look a little cramped if you don't have any spacing between them. This is our drag and drop editor, so if I wanted to put city, state, and zip on the same line, I can do that by just grabbing city, or grabbing state rather, moving it to the right of city until I see that gray box appear, and then I'll let it go. Same thing with zip. Just grab it, and then I can let it go over there. If I want first name and last name on the same line, I can do that as well. Just very easy to just drag things around and move on the editor. All right, let's go ahead and move through some of these different field types. Section. Profile information right here is an example of a section. It's just basically a container for different questions on your, or different fields on your form. You can name the section. The sections are also group permissionable. So if you have a bunch of questions that are only applicable to a certain member group, you could use a section and then just permission the entire section rather than permissioning each field individually. Another thing about sections is that it's good for applications. Maybe if you're trying to collect multiple types of information, you could have this one be individual information, maybe another one be company information. So it's just letting your front-end users very easily know what information you're looking for in each area of your form. Button. We have an example of a button down here, submit button. You'll see we have 3 different labels we can put on these buttons: submit, continue, and previous page. And there's also your alignment options as well for your buttons. Checkbox. I'm going to go over 3 of these at the same time here: checkbox, radio, and selection set. So you can see here, well, again, once I click on it, this properties area is going to open up over here on the right. I'm going to call this one Launch Selections. I'm going to call the export name the same thing. All right, we're going to make this field using price calculations, but not make it required. We're going to make it be left aligned here, and then let's go ahead and hit Edit Selection. So what are our choices going to be? Let's say steak, chicken, fish, and salad. And then if we want to have prices associated with these, we could do like what we're doing here, where we just type in $6 maybe for steak. But what I would recommend doing is hitting this Insert Price button, grab that price, and then just put that price in for each of your options. Because what that's going to do is automatically tie your back-end pricing to your front-end pricing. So it's going to make it seamless. Whereas you could have an issue here if you entered in $6 like I saw, and you either forgot to enter your pricing on the administrative side, or you entered different pricing. It's not automatically going to update that pricing for your front-end users. So I just recommend, whenever possible, using this pricing area just to make sure that you're, 1, remembering to put that pricing in, and 2, that it definitely matches from your administrative side to what your front-end users are seeing. So now you'll see everything will default to 0 since I haven't set any pricing yet. If I unclick using price calculations, you're going to see that it's going to put those pound, price, pound back in. And so that's how you're going to know if you forgot to check pricing, because it's going to show you that rather than the zeros. Radio. I'm just going to go ahead and edit the selections on radio just to speed this up a little bit. If I also had the same options here for the radio and the checkbox, I would not want the export name to be the same. You want all of your fields to have different export names, just for on the back end when you are setting up either field logic, you're going to be using those export names, or when you're pulling in receipt data, you're also going to be using those export names. So it's just a lot easier to make sure you're selecting the right field that you want if all of your fields have different export names. All right. One other thing I wanted to go over are these other options that we have down here below. We have our expiration date settings. Let's pretend like this was an application for a minute. So we can add an expiration date setting, and we can say, hey, this is going to be a 1-year membership option where steak is. Where chicken is, maybe it's going to be a 2-year membership option. So we have those options on our forms to offer multiple year memberships along with this single membership. Field limits is another thing we have the ability to do. So let's say we have a limited number of any of these food items. What we can do is either display that option as disabled, so it's going to be kind of a grayed out option that they're not going to be able to check, or we can remove that item from the form completely once that limit's been hit. So maybe we have 30 of each of these options. And once that limit's hit, no one else can order that option. So you'll see here checkbox, we can check as many of these as we want. Radio is going to be a single select, where if we select one, it's going to deselect another one. And then we have our selection set, which is going to be a drop-down menu. Now, for selection set, you can see even though we haven't picked anything, steak's already been chosen for us. So if you're doing a single selection set, what you're going to want to do is add an empty field. And then what you do, you'll click in there one more time to edit those selections. Now there are empties in there. We'll clear out the label, and we'll move it to the top of the list here. By hitting 0, 0 is going to make it move above 1. So now you'll see we have a blank field there, and then if we click on our drop-down, we'll still see all of our different options there. All right, but selection set's kind of a little bit different than the other ones in that a selection set can be single choice or multiple choice. So we can click Allow Multiple Selections. And we can also, what we're going to want to do if we do that is change the height of our box here. So this is how many options are going to be displaying. We have only have 4 options, so maybe we'll just go ahead and display all of them. And then so I'm going to go ahead and remove that empty now, since the empty doesn't make sense if we have a multiple selection set. And then we can select one. If we hit Shift and click, we can select all of them. Control and click, we can select individual ones. Each of these field types, the checkbox, the radio, and the selection set are all going to have others along with the normal one. And what the other is going to do is just drop that other at the bottom of the list, and then if they check that, they'll be able to type in there. All right, so let's move on to country. Country is just your standard country drop-down field. Date. Date, your user is going to select a month from a drop-down, a day from a drop-down, then they'll type in their 4-digit year. Email field, we have an example of an email field down here. It's just going to be your normal text field, but what it's going to do is it's going to check to make sure there's an @ symbol. It's also going to make sure there's a dot, some kind of extension. I got a question about when we're going to be inserting this price. I normally do that right after I build the whole structure of my form. So we'll go into that. You actually do the pricing on the pricing tab. I normally kind of walk across my tabs from left to right. We're currently on the Pages tab here. So we'll get to that shortly. File attachment. You're going to be able to let your user submit a file or a photo to your form. This field's only going to be able to contain one file or photo. So if you're trying to collect more than one file or photo, you're going to need more than one file attachment field. Hidden field, that's a field that uses field logic. We'll cover that a little bit later. Image. A lot of people like to put images at the top of their forms. So you can just put an image field up there, click into it, open that properties area up, select the image that you want. You're going to go to your media manager here, be able to pick any image within your media manager. If you don't see the image you want, you're also going to be able to upload an image right to your media manager from your computer as well. select my image, hit insert. Then I can change my alignment if I want it centered. I can also restrict my height and or my width. I would recommend only restricting one or the other. The other will automatically proportion. If you restrict both in size, then you might run into a situation where you have an image that's out of proportion. As you can see here, all we're getting is a little preview window on our administrative side. This is going to look quite a bit different than our front end. I've got a question about using an image versus a custom header for my form. If you go to appearance area, which we'll check out a little bit later, but you'll see you can have a custom form header. If you use a custom form header, it's going to appear on every page of your form automatically. So maybe that's what you're interested in. If you use an image field, you're going to have to add it to each page of your form. So that's kind of the only difference there of why I would use one over the other. And I have another question about the other selection. So the way the other selection works again is that you would just populate your list just like we did. So let's go ahead and just populate this list as an example. And so you'll see that the other option just appears at the bottom of the list. So that's basically how the other option works. All right, let's go to label. We've already shown an example of a label. It's this right here. What I use labels for mostly are for instructions, just like you're seeing here. I'll also use labels for any kind of custom HTML stuff that I want to pull into the form. Because this label field is going to be good for supporting HTML coding that you're going to bring in. So if you want to bring in a table, that's an HTML table, you just paste that code right into here, and then hit save, and then that table will populate your form. Number, it's just going to be your standard text box field, but it's only going to accept numbers. Password field, it's going to ask your user to enter and confirm a password. If you are using this field, I would make sure it's tied to your password attribute in your database, because you don't really want your user to enter a password and then it not really do anything. So make sure it's linked somewhere. Phone number field. For the most part, we have our phone numbers just enter into normal text boxes like this, but you can also have your phone number enter into a phone number field. It's going to show the formatting that it wants that phone number in, but it's also going to require that your user enters that phone number in that exact format. So it might cause some headaches for your user if they have not entered their phone number in this format, because it's going to return an error and ask them to enter it again. So if you really want your phone number in this format in your database, then sure, make them enter it in this format. But if you're not that concerned about it, I would just let them type it into a text field, because it's going to make it easier on them. Quantity field. The quantity field is going to allow you to have quantity-based discounting. Example I use for this is if you're selling t-shirts at your event, and maybe if you buy one t-shirt, the t-shirt's going to cost 20 bucks, but if you buy 2 or more t-shirts, maybe the price drops to $15 a piece. That quantity field is going to allow for that kind of discounting. Registrant group field. This is the field I was talking about earlier, where your members are going to be able to invite some guests along with themselves to your event. So you can say, would you like to bring any guests with you? Maybe here's where we want to shorten our export name down a little bit, so we'll just call it guest. So we'll go ahead and save that real quick. Let's make it left aligned. You see how it moved all our options out to the right that weren't left aligned. And then, so what we can do here, right now you see that our user just has the ability to enter as many guests as they would like. But maybe we want to limit how many guests they can bring, so we'll change that to a drop-down rather than a text box, and we'll say, hey, you can bring a maximum of 2 guests. Shrink this so I can save it real quick. I'll blow it back up. So now we have a drop-down here with 0, 1, or 2 guests in it. But maybe we're going to make this field using price calculations. Our guests aren't going to be free. So what we could do here is put $100 each. We're not going to be able to use that price like we did on the other one here, so we're actually going to have to enter a price and just make sure it lines up on our administrative side. And then what we also have the ability to do is collect up to 5 fields of information on each guest that our user is bringing along with themselves. So maybe we want to collect first name, last name, and maybe we want to collect email address as well. So now our user is going to be prompted to enter that information for each of their guests. We can make that guest information required if we want, require registrant information. And they're going to go to a special page to fill out that guest information so we can enter some header text on that page as well. I normally like to enter guest information below, just so they know what they're supposed to be doing on that page. Let me shrink this again so I can save it. You can also set field limits. So if you wanted to limit the total number of guests that could come to your event, you could set a field limit for number of guests. All right, let's go ahead and look at the next field type here. Social Security number is just going to be a text field that's going to format a number like a Social Security number. State field, which is going to be just like this field right here, just a drop down with your states in it. Text area is going to be a larger area for your user to type in their response. What we can do here is put in values here for rows and columns, and that's going to make our box larger for our user to view. Each row is going to be about 1 column of text high, or one character high, and each column is going to be about half a character wide. So we can go ahead and enter maybe 6 by 70, and then we'll see our text box there. All right, the last field I want to go over is unique ID. Unique ID might be good for a member number that you're carrying over from your old system. So what you can do is have a starting number. So if you left off at 662 members, you could start this at 663, and then it'll count up by 1 every time someone fills out this form. So that's just a neat way maybe to keep that member number going. So you would definitely make sure this is linked to a member number attribute too if you're doing that. And this is going to be a read-only field. Your users are not going to be able to update that unique ID. All right, let's go ahead and add a second page real quick so we can just test out that field logic and also show you a hidden field. So let's add a hidden field. So what the hidden field is basically it replaces maybe a label or a blank line. That's about all it can replace, because pretty much every other field has field logic associated with it. Labels, you cannot put field logic with them. Blank lines, you can't have field logic with blank lines either. So what you can do in your hidden field is type in maybe some instructions. So maybe if they ordered a steak, you could say steaks will be served medium, or at medium temperature or something like that. So you can have that on there, and that's going to display only if they select steak. So what you could do is edit that field logic, and then what we're going to do is make that dependent on a previous field, and the previous field we want it dependent on is lunch selections. So you see our 4 options for lunch selections here, and what we want is for it to appear if they answered steak, but for it to be hidden if they didn't answer steak. So we're going to select the other 3 options, and we're going to say make the field uneditable, which basically means hidden. So now this is only going to appear now if our user selects steak on that first page. And we'll add some buttons here so we can test this out as we look at our form on the front end. All right. So after our form's built and we're happy with the structure of the form, what we can do is go to permissions and decide who is able to access our form. So maybe this form's only applicable to certain member groups. Maybe this form's not going to be looked at by our public. You have to be a member to access the form. So we'll go ahead and take off everyone but members. So only members can access the form. And then we'll go ahead and give ourselves administrative privileges to edit that form. Next, we're going to set up our login page. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the form URL here. So I'm going to click on the form title, grab this form URL once again for testing, and I'm going to paste it in there into a different browser. So I'm not logged in as an admin. I'm in a totally different browser where I don't have any sessions open, because you cannot test forms as an admin. All right, so you can see here now we're on the front end. We're making our users log in to fill out the form, which is good because that's going to populate their information on the form once the system recognizes them. That's another reason why we want them to log in at the beginning, so the system recognizes them. And here, an event registration form, we're not going to want our users signing up more than once, so we'll have them go ahead and edit previous submissions rather than start a new submission. You can also have your users not log in, but if they don't log in, it's not going to populate their information ahead of time. It's also not going to update the database. So it's just something to think about. Reason why you might want that is for maybe an anonymous survey or an anonymous ballot. You might want them logging in. Your main login page text is this text. Even though we don't have anything in here, sometimes it'll default to showing some text, so just make sure you check that. So we'll just change application to registration here. Below that, you'll see our existing users box is checked. If we don't want to display existing users, we can say something else here, members or something. And we also have a new user section, but this is going to be a members only form, so we're going to uncheck that. We could also change this text here as well by entering some text in the section content area. So I'm going to save that. Now I'm going to refresh this page so we can see our updated page. So now you'll see we have our welcome to the registration form, and then instead of existing users, this now says members here. I'm going to go ahead and log in as a member. So now you can see my image here on the form showing up full-sized. You can see the blank lines are not showing up. 2 blank lines equals about 1 line of space on your front end. So you can see your password. You can see all this information here is pulling in. Well, everything that's attached to a field in the database is automatically pulling in, just like we said it would. You can see the spacing is kind of tight. Like I was mentioned, when there's no blank lines, you can see when there is blank lines, there's a little more spacing there. If we select stake on this first one, and we submit, you'll see that this line of text shows up. Stakes will be served medium. If we select anything other than stake, you'll see when we're on that next page, now that text is not showing up. All right, let's go back into the form editor here, and we'll set up our pricing. So we set up those 2 pricing fields, guest and our lunch selections. Default price for guests, we are going to enter default price here. Because for guests, you don't really have any choices. You're either bringing guests or you're not. You're not picking like steak or chicken or something like that. For our lunch selections, we're going to leave that blank because we do have choices as for what we're picking. Let's go ahead and set up group pricing here for our lunch selections, just to show you how group pricing works. For every group that has access to the form, you're going to have to set up pricing. If you want to set it up for one group, you have to set it up for every group. So we're going to set up our pricing, pick all the groups that have access. I just didn't select the groups that don't have access to the form. Continue. Now it's going to ask us about previous fields. Again, this can only be used if it's a multiple page form for the previous fields. You can't have it be based, you can have your pricing based on previous fields, but not if they're on the same page as each other. Guest is a quantity-based field, so you could have a different pricing scheme depending on how many guests they register, but we're not going to do that today. And then we'll click Edit next to our lunch selections to set up that lunch selection pricing. So now we have our steak price. Maybe steak's going to be 20 bucks. So we'll just go ahead and enter 20 across the board here. And we'll change that group pricing here in a minute. Maybe chicken's going to be 18 bucks. Fish 15. maybe salad's going to be 12. So now that we have our pricing entered across the board here, what we're going to do is go ahead. Maybe we decided that our board of directors is going to eat for free regardless of what they pick. So we'll go back to board of directors and we'll enter 0 for them. So we'll hit save. So now we got all of our pricing set up on our form. We could have some other pricing on here as well. You can see we can have date-based pricing. So if it's an event registration, we could set up an early bird price or maybe a late registration price. So what we do for that is come up with a name for it, make it active, pick a date range where that pricing is going to be valid, and then we can change the pricing for whatever field we want in that range. We also have our discount codes. So you have the option to hand out discount codes to certain individuals if you want. You can name them something other than discount codes by entering something in here. If you click add a discount code, it's going to ask you for, well, you got to decide what it's going to do first. It's going to take either an amount off the total, a percentage off the total, or you can have a different pricing scheme altogether. And what the discount code itself has to be at least 5 characters long. And then it can be active only, you can make it active during a date range as well. Recurring payment. Recurring payments might be good for maybe a donation form if you're trying to get your members to make a monthly donation of a certain amount, or maybe if you have a very large membership fee, you can allow your users to maybe break it out into multiple payments. So that's what you might use a recurring payment for. And then you can set up that scheme as you see here pretty much any way you want: weekly, monthly, yearly, custom. Delayed billing. This is so you can basically have maybe like a free trial on your site. But what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and collect that credit card information up front, and then it's just going to delay charging that credit card by whatever number of days you enter in here. So then if that user comes to you and says they want to cancel before that credit card gets hit, you can go in there and cancel that before it happens. And then lastly, down here we have our revenue account fields. Revenue accounts are basically just kind of revenue organizers. So you can enter different revenue accounts, and then you could assign your pricing fields to whatever revenue accounts you wanted to. And then, of course, you can export your financial information to those different to your QuickBooks or your accounting software if you wanted to. After we get our pricing set up, we're going to set up what types of payments we're going to accept. We'll do that on the Payment Options tab. First, we'll say, hey, this form does deal with payment transactions. And then you have a note down here that any transactions that are submitted when your form's in active mode will be billed on your monthly statement. So that's another reason to make sure that it's thoroughly tested before you move it to active mode, because you're going to start getting billed for those transactions. If you have a credit card processor linked up, you can check that on here. If you have a third-party e-check processor set up as well, you can check that on. And then you have our 3 non-immediate payment options. They have the option to call in a payment, bill the user, or send check. And for each of these options, you can see that you can create a custom message that's going to go to that user only if they select that option. So if they select send check as an option, you can have a message set up that says, make check payable to whoever and mail to this address. You can have that message set up in there. After you get your payment option set up, you're going to set up your confirmation page. Confirmation page is the page that your user will be directed to after a successful payment or after completing the form. So you can have it, a lot of people will use this maybe as a receipt, because on this page, this confirmation page, you can insert either any information from the user profile. You can also enter any information from that form itself. So all these fields are getting identified by their export names. This is why you want all of these fields to have different export names so you can identify them. So if we had multiple fields named lunch selections, we would know which one was which. You're also going to be able to insert any kind of receipt financial information that you want down here as well. Again, to access that, you click on these two black arrows moving in a circle. That is our Merge Data button. After you enter that confirmation page, you have the ability to send out an optional confirmation email. The confirmation email, a lot of times it'll look pretty much just the same as that confirmation page, but it's just another way to get it in front of your user. You can have a URL to direct your users to upon completion. And what that's going to do is just put a kind of a close button up on that confirmation page. So if your user clicks on the close button, they'll move to this page. Recurring payment failure and confirmation email. Those are just optional emails that can go out whenever recurring payment happens. The confirmation is just so every month. Maybe if you're getting your user to pay you monthly, it's just going to send an automated email out to them every month, just letting them know that their credit card's been charged. And then a failure confirmation email is just saying that, hey, your credit card didn't go through, maybe it's expired. Can you please, log into your profile and update your credit card information? And then if you're sending out refunds, you can have an automated refund confirmation email go out as well. Let's go ahead and move to the Settings tab. Here you can change the name of the form. You can change the status of the form like we went over earlier, move it from test to active to inactive between those statuses. Contact name generation. You don't want to make sure this is set up. I normally have it set up to first name and last name with a space in between. But that contact name is just used a lot of places in our system to identify which record it is. So you want to make sure all of your profiles have a contact name associated with them. Like I said earlier, when we're creating the event, we don't have to link it to an event just then because we can go back and link it later. This is where we would link that to an event later on the settings page. You can have recurring payment failure action, also a successful retry action. Form limits. You can have it so a date limit. So you can say this form is going to be open until this date and time, and once that date and time hits, the form is going to be closed. No one else is going to be able to complete it. You can also have a number submission on the whole form. So maybe this form is only able to be completed 100 times. Maybe there's only a limit for 100 people at your event, so you can limit how many submissions there are. Then you can have a message that appears after the form's accessed. After that 100th submission, they'll let them know that it's full. Field limit notification. So we set up those field limits on our lunch options. We said 30, maximum of 30 for each option. So we can have a email go out to an administrative email address once that number is hit. So maybe if there's still more time, we can order more of that particular lunch option. We can do that at that time. Another example is maybe if you have a breakout session. Maybe you could, if you're getting more interest in one session than another, maybe you could go ahead and switch those rooms and you could change those limits as well. Receipt management, contact preferences, you're probably not going to be messing with either of those. And then we have our social activity stream down here. This is just so it's going to be included in the social activity stream. That's if you're using our social front end. Okay, let's go ahead and move down to the general ledger. This is where we're going to see all of our credit card transactions. So you'll see here, we got our transactions here. We can export this to a CSV file. We can also export it to an IIF file, which is going to be a QuickBooks file. You can select our date ranges that we want to export this on as well. Payment service options. This is where we're going to be able to set up a payment account. We're also going to be able to run a manual transaction from here. So if someone said that, hey, they were going to pay by check when they completed the form, but then later they decided they wanted to pay by credit card, so they called you and wanted to give you that credit card information over the phone, you could enter that manual transaction right here. Revenue account management, this is where you're going to be able to set up those different revenue accounts that we're talking about. So to set up a revenue account, all you got to do is enter a name and a description. And again, those are just for organizing your revenue for when you're exporting it to your accounting software. Let's go through the different form-related reports now. We got our form user report. This is basically just going to let us know who submitted a form. So we could have a title, pick a date range, pick what forms we're interested in seeing. And then once we enter that information, we're going to have a report created. So we'll then submit the report. And then that report's going to say, hey, these were how many users were eligible to complete the form, how many did, and then what groups were they in. We'll be able to see all that information. Form activity report. This is going to tell you when your form is being completed. You can look at it by day or by month. So maybe for an event form, it makes more sense for by day, but maybe for an application form, it might make more sense for by month. And once you set that form up, you're going to pick which form you want, a date range again. You'll be able to see how that report looks. So you'll see which months the most people are submitting your form, or also, you know, if it's by day, you can see by day as well. Form revenue report. This is probably our best form report. A lot of different revenue options here. The one I normally like to point out is the receipts with balance due. If you are accepting, if you're letting your users pay by check or pay by phone, you need to track who's paid you and who hasn't paid you. So you can have this receipts with balance due report where you've got your different forms on there, and you're busy looking to see who still owes you money. So each form is going to have its own sheet, so you can go in there and look and see, oh, okay, so Elise still owes us money for that professional member form. Once we get that money, what we can do is click on that receipt. Then we can say, we can make a manual payment right from here as well, and we can say add a payment record. So maybe we got a check, and the amount that was due, $250. And then we can, you know, enter some check details here in the comments area if we want. We'll submit that, close out. Then we'll see that that record's been added. And then, so what we're going to do, see that the balance is empty. Now if we go to that report again, we'll see that that person's no longer going to appear on the report. So the report's only going to pull those with someone that has a balance other than 0. Form field report. There's two things that you can look at on a form field report. You can look at how your field limits are coming along, so you can see how close you are to being filled up on any of your items. You can also look at a selection summary. And a selection summary, what that's going to allow you to do is look at your different selection items on your field. So maybe your conference breakouts you want to look at. So you can see, hey, for this 10 o'clock session, I was offering 3 different breakouts. 12 people signed up for one person for another 5 for this last one. You can click on any of these, see who signed up for it. You'll be able to export just this list, print templates for that list, contact them. So maybe if there was some changes to this one session, you could go in here, grab these 12 people, contact them, and then say, hey, there's been a change to your session. These are the new details. So there's some nice things you can do with the report here. You can export as well and save that report. If you save a report, you're going to have the ability to pin that report right to your control panel for really easy access next time you want to use it. All right. That is all the material I wanted to cover this morning. I know it was a lot of material. You probably didn't catch everything, but you're able to attend this form training as often as you would like. If you have any questions, you can enter them into that question box below. You can, if you can't think of your questions now, you can also contact your implementation manager if you're in implementation. You can contact the memberclicks help team if you're not in implementation with those questions. So I'll hang on the line here for just a couple minutes, see if anyone has any more questions. If you do, once again, type them into that box. But if you don't have any questions, thanks for attending today. I hope you learned a lot.